Does anyone else's head start spinning when you start thinking about the school year that is right around the corner? Mine does. Yeah, we are all keenly aware, like if we weren't before, I think we are now, of what an integral role our school systems play in a functioning society. And I know that many of you are parents and you are trying to get your bearings on digital learning and what that's going to mean for your family. Meanwhile, we would all love an answer to the big question, which is, how long are we doing this, right? I think we all want to know, but we've got this constant stress about what this school year is going to be like. And in that stress to figure out what it's going to be, we might lose sight of the people that have always made education work, our teachers. You see, there is this phenomenon that happens anytime we talk about schooling, right? Like there's no question that our culture places a high value on a high quality education. And there is no question that we believe in the inherent worth and potential of our children. But in the conversation about quality education, the voice of teachers and their experience tends to be pushed to the side, right? I mean, how often, when a child actually receives a high quality education, do we take the time to pause and appreciate those who provided that high quality education? So I think that we're in a moment where we risk doing that, where we risk having such a focus on what the experience is going to be like for the kids that we really just totally ignore the experience of our teachers, the people that we depend on the most. So today, I am going to give you 5 ways that you can support teachers in this moment. So I want to set this up a little bit. Lately, you've seen probably some teachers sharing concerns about their own health, their stress level, their mental health, how they are going to homeschool their own kids while also providing a good education for their students virtually. When we're aware of those conversations, we want to be careful not to inadvertently send an "I don't care" message by reminding them of like, hey, you've got an obligation to society, so sorry. We don't want to be people that respond to another person's struggles and stress and pain with reasons for why they shouldn't be hurting. We want to be people that respond with compassion. And so that's the first way that you can support teachers in your life. Listen to their struggles and resist the urge to be dismissive. Rather, step into those struggles. Listen really, really well. We want to be people that empathize and we respond with care and concern. It is not loving to tell someone who is struggling and hurting or scared that they shouldn't be and that their feelings aren't valid. We are going to be a community that responds with compassion to our teachers. Number 2, be careful in this season not to minimize the professional qualifications of teachers as we transition into online learning. Be mindful of the way that we talk about teaching and learning in these next few months. Teachers have college degrees. They have years of expertise in their content area and in curriculum, as well as coursework in child development. They've also taken extensive coursework in brain science regarding how the human brain learns. They've also studied levels of thinking, learning styles, specialized learning strategies for learning disabled students and English language learners. They've practiced differentiating lessons. They've integrated higher order thinking skills, cooperative learning strategies, active learning strategies. They've integrated the arts and STEM into other subject areas. They are experienced and they are doing this with classrooms full of children, sometimes 100, 120 students a day. These are professionals, worthy of being dignified as such. So as the rest of us do our best to support remote learning from home, please be careful not to minimize the professional nature of educators with the things that you say. Google and tutorial videos are not the same as being taught by a qualified professional with all of that expertise. Imagine if I said, okay, you know what? I got to pull a tooth. So I Googled, how to pull a tooth, and then I pulled it. So I'm pretty much doing the same thing that a dentist does. We want to make sure to not minimize the professional nature of educators and teaching in this same way. We know they're not the same thing. Now, before I tell you about the third way that you can support teachers, I want to give you a reminder about the emotional load that teachers are carrying. So in this present moment, all of those best practices that I just mentioned, all of those tools that teachers carry in their teaching toolbox are really difficult to implement in a virtual online learning world. That leaves teachers feeling like they are trying to teach with their hands tied behind their back. And that will inevitably make them feel like a failure, potentially every single day. They're already carrying that emotional burden. But then to add to that emotional load, I want to remind you that often as a society, we forget that we are asking teachers to care for the most vulnerable among us, the least of these. Teachers have day-to-day, face-to-face interaction with children. Children are already vulnerable. And then you add on to that, some of those children are poor. Some of them are victims of abuse. Some of them are disabled. Some of them are homeless. Some of them fear becoming homeless if their parents ever find out that they're gay. Some of them are terrified of being deported. Some of them are terrified that their parents will be deported. Some of those students are addicted to drugs. Some of them have been arrested. Some of them have lost a parent. And some of them feel very unwanted by their parents. I think many of us hear about those things and we have a heart for them and we really do care. But the difference is most of us don't have day-to-day, face-to-face interaction with the most vulnerable people in our society. Ask yourself, do you have day-to-day, face-to-face interaction with children, with the poor, with victims of abuse, with those that are disabled, with those facing deportation, or those that are homeless, or those that are afraid of becoming homeless if their parents find out that they're gay and kick them out of the house? Or, do you have day-to-day, face-to-face interaction with those that are struggling with addiction, or those that are justice involved, or young people that feel unwanted by those that they should be able to trust to love and protect them? The answer for most of us is no. We don't have as much day-to-day interaction with this most vulnerable group in our society. So while we care, we don't actually bear that burden. Another burden I want to talk to you about. So many of us right now are on this journey of learning about racial injustice, and many of us have the privilege of being on that journey as we look at a book. For teachers are having to navigate racial injustice in real time. If they're in a classroom and a racial slur is used by one student, that teacher has to respond appropriately, and they have to respond in front of everyone. They're not afforded the privilege of learning from behind a screen or from behind a book. We expect them to do the hard work, the heavy lifting, and to do it every day in real time. Also, I don't know if you've ever thought about this, but much of our society is built around the public school system to help solve a lot of our society's issues. We've laid the burden squarely on the shoulders of teachers for working on societal issues that don't actually have a lot to do with teaching their content area. If you're not convinced, let me give you a couple of examples. So one thing that we already know is that we rely on schools to provide food for the hungry. We also rely on schools to sometimes administer vaccines. And when our country sees something that seems to be a really big issue, something like teenage pregnancy or drug use or gun violence or childhood obesity or nutrition in general, or how to invest in the stock market, or along with any other life skills, usually the dialogue is, schools need to do that. Yeah, that's a thing that schools need to do. We have asked schools, meaning teachers, to fix it. We've asked them to fix a lot of things. And while it's really noble of our teachers to try, we have laid the responsibility for the least of these at their feet, and then we have asked them to fix many of the problems in our society. So, the third thing you can do to support teachers is we've got to do our part and not leave teachers to do it on their own. As a society, we need to acknowledge that we have abdicated our personal responsibility for caring for the least of these. And we have also abdicated our responsibility for engaging in the solutions to so many of the struggles that we have as a society. We must collectively care for the most vulnerable in our society rather than leave that to teachers. So I challenge you. What have you been sitting back on? Where have you not been taking a step? What have you thought about what others should be doing, but you haven't really stepped in? I'll give you a suggestion. We have a lot of kids that need mentors. We have a lot of kids that need some support and encouragement. A lot of kids that are in single parent homes where that parent is doing the very best they can and they need a little support. But a lot of times when we say that, many of us are like, oh, that kind of cramped my schedule. And I get that. But what that does is that leaves that burden on that teacher. And so I encourage you, maybe it's not mentoring, but think about where can you step in to care for the most vulnerable in our society and support teachers in a big way. Number 4, our teachers need verbal, written, and resourced support. They need us cheering them on. They need us saying thank you. That means you say it to them, you say it to their administrator, and you say it online. You know, sometimes when you see those posts online where people are kind of arguing about teachers, and we want to be a voice that says, I thank teachers, I celebrate teachers, I appreciate all that they're doing, all the adjustments that they have to make, and I realize, you know what, it's not going to be perfect, but none of us are doing a perfect job of making these adjustments. And so it doesn't have to be perfect for me to celebrate them and say thank you. I will also gently remind you that teachers are 10-month employees. They are paid for 10 months of employment. And that starts about 5 days before the school year starts. That's when teacher work days begin. So what that means is that all of this prep work that teachers are doing right now for online learning, they are doing without pay. Ask yourself, would you work for 2 months without being paid? Again, most of us would go, no, I would not do that. So that's what a lot of these teachers have done. And so we owe them some gratitude. We need to be cheering them on, saying thank you. We also need to be putting resources in their hands. So we need to reach out to teachers and say, what do you need? You need it, I've got it, here you go. And we need to not forget about them for 6 months from now, because a lot of those needs might be met right now, but 6 months from now, those needs might have changed significantly. So let's not forget about them. Let's stay in their corner and say, if you've got a need, I'll meet it. Last, one of the best ways that you can show a teacher that they've got your support is to hold your child accountable. What does that mean? Well, in virtual world, what that looks like is that your child knows that it is their responsibility to turn in their assignments to the best of their ability every day. It is not their teacher's job to chase them down virtually somehow and remind them that you as a parent hold them accountable. And if at some point we transition to in-person learning, holding your child accountable means that your child knows that it is your standard as a parent that they wear their mask and that they wear it correctly and that they're not relying on their teacher to tell them to put their mask on correctly. That your teachers are supported because the children that you have in your home know what your standard is. I cannot tell you how much it means to a teacher to know that a parent truly supports what they're doing in that classroom. This school year is going to be an adventure. Let's support those who are making it happen.